Great. Let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to call. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to go ahead and call to order the June 12th, 2023 City of Charleston Real Estate Committee meeting to order. Let's go ahead and get things started with an invocation. If Councilmember Greg would mind doing the honors, we would appreciate it.
Let's do a quick moment of silence. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Councilmember Greg. First item up is approval of the May 20.
Move for approval.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify support by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next item up is the approval of a fourth amendment to a management agreement between the City of Charleston and the Charleston Digital Corridor Foundation for space at 22 West Edge. And this is on a month-to-month basis through the end of the city's lease, currently running through April 1st, 2025. Matt, is this yours?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
So this, as you stated, this would be a fourth amendment to the management agreement with the Charleston Digital Corridor Foundation. They've been serving as a manager for our space, our 8,000 square feet at 22 West Edge. Our current term is set to expire in the middle of July. This amendment would run us out through the end of our existing 5-year governmental lease for that space. And the CDC on our behalf recently renegotiated a lease extension with our subleasee, the Low Country Center for Veterans Research. So they will be there through the end of our 5-year governmental lease as well, with a rent increase, I will add.
Got it. Thank you, Matt, for that presentation. Do I have a motion and a second we can get on the floor and get this to discussion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion, questions for staff? Mr. Mayor.
So just confirming, I think it's true, Matt, that it's a total pass through on the cost. It's really not costing us anything. That the subtenant is covering the full rent. Is that correct?
This most recent lease extension that they did puts us within about $1,500. So we are almost at a break-even point. So we have a very, very small subsidy. And considering that our cost is a little almost $26,000 per month, it's a pretty significant amount. And Ernest at the CDC has renegotiated. At first, obviously, he had some of the CDC tenants in there. We were at a break even a few months into that. We had to eat some early month-and-a-half costs, but since then, with the Low Country Center for Veterans Research, he's got them to bump up their rent to almost a break-even point to where we are now for the remaining almost 2 years.
Right. And just to let you know, that subtenant is doing wonderful work, brain research for veterans and other medical applications. So I think they're pretty cutting edge, positive work that they're performing, for what that's worth.
Great. Councilman Waring.
Thank you. This is not for this motion, but at the end of the 5-year term, what's our objective? Are we out of it at that point? We plan to extend? I mean, renegotiate? What's the goal?
As far as I know, we've served our purpose here of having help the building get built and financed, and unless there's some special consideration, I think we would just let the lease lapse and let the folks try to find another, either continue to lease it to the subtenant or find a new one.
Right. Thank you. That was my recollection. But I just Just want to kind of follow up. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
What was the name of the subtenant again? I think I missed that first go round.
The Low Country Center for Veterans Research.
Got it.
Excuse me, Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
We have two more people in the waiting room. I'm not sure if they need to join. It's Jason Ward and Jonathan Oakman.
I believe they, we certainly want to let them in. I think their item is item H on the agenda. Well, good deal. Matt, thanks for that presentation. Does anybody else from the committee have any comments or questions before we vote? All right, hearing none, all in favor of the Fourth Amendment, not in the Constitution, but in this agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, hearing none, the ayes have it. Thanks, Matt. Next item on the agenda is an authorization for the mayor to execute on behalf of the city a third amendment to the commercial lease agreement. And this is involving the Pinefield Fire Station. Magali, you got this one?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is an amendment to the lease agreement for the fire station at Pinefield. Our lease will end as it stands at the end of this year. So this would allow us for another 3-year term plus one option to renew, 1-year option to renew. All other items remain in place, including the 5% annual increase, excuse me, on rent. And this is, of course, while we are hopefully in the process of completing a new fire station to be built.
Move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we've got a motion
Second.
on the floor,
Second.
duly seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Councilman Gregg.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just would like to point out that this fire station is in pretty bad shape. And while I know we're not directly responsible for getting the replacement, this one is in desperate need of replacement. So anything we can do to help accelerate the development on Enterprise Drive to get this new fire station built would be, I think, well received.
Got it. Got it. Council Pate.
thank you. Is anybody from the fire department available on this call? So I just want to make sure what Councilmember Greg had mentioned, and if somebody can clarify this for me, because I had the impression that this is this the one that is at the foot of the 526 bridge?
Yes, sir.
Well, this is at the Marina Drive.
This is the Marina Drive, because when I looked at it, the Pinefield, I thought that was the one that we had extended on the so-called the newer one, but this is the one that was the former housing for the construction company when they were building 526. Is this the one we're talking about?
That is correct.
Yeah. So if anybody's ever been out there, saying it's in bad shape is an understatement. And I just want to echo the sooner we get this thing up and running and our replacement built, the better off we're going to be. That's just not in very good condition. It's so bad that coming out of that station, the apparatus has to be careful coming down the driveway so it doesn't do damage to the truck. So I know we need to extend this lease, but as soon as we get this thing out of commission, the better off for the fire department. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor.
So in light of that, those comments, I did want to report that I think we finally got past our last kind of roadblock internally to be able to proceed with the replacement fire station. We needed some consideration at BZA for tree removal, frankly, and we got that approval just last week, I was told, or just recently. So I think our capital projects team, with Beth Brownlee is going to be our project manager on this one again, is ready to move forward. Matt Froelich, I see his hand up. He might have more recent information than I, but we are more than ready, past ready to move forward, getting that replacement going. Matt?
Yeah, so just to update everyone. So as far as the existing Pine Field temporary station is concerned and its condition, over the last few months earlier this year, we have had some work done to the interior of that station and the exterior roof by both the landlord and the city. The city has some small work it's going to continue to do in there to make it more habitable. We understand with the next 3 years plus a 1 year option that we need to make it a better station to the best of our ability. Mayor, you are correct. There was a BZA approval related to the Enterprise Drive property last week. Our current bargain sale agreement is out of date. We have an amendment to that bargain sale agreement for that property that we are negotiating a few items on still. We have a meeting in about a week and a half with the developer. Hopefully we'll have all those things tied up, bring that amendment to you all for your review and approval, and hopefully move closer towards closing and getting that fire station constructed.
Thank you for that update.
All right. Any further questions, comments from the committee? All right, all in favor of item B, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, next item up is in regards to the Children's Museum of the Low Country. And this is approval of a second amendment to the amended and restated lease agreement. And we've got Ms. Copeland on the line, ready to share some more details on this one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this has a bit of a long sordid history. Just to give you a brief reminder, we initially came here with a request to council that they purchase the building in order to use it as collateral to do all the renovations. That failed. So then the museum came back with additional requests to extend the lease term for 99 years. I think that was deferred as well. And since then, Karen Coltrane has come on as the new executive director, and she's been fabulous and very communicative with us. There she is. And so now we are at a position to present to you all an amendment that would extend the term to 2040 with the availability of a 10-year option at the end of that to extend. It's going to add 2 council members as ex officio members to the board, which I think that was a big ask of council during those discussions. And then as far as money is concerned, in this, it will be a one-time allocation of $1.2 million from the city to the museum toward their $4 million renovation project. That will be coming out of hospitality, I believe, hospitality taxes, but Amy will chime in there if I'm wrong on that one. And then we'll also be adding a $50,000 annual maintenance fee to go toward upkeep of the building. So with that said, we would recommend approval of this amendment.
So
Any
moved.
questions?
All right, thank you, Ms. Copeland. We got a motion on the floor from the
I'm
mayor,
gonna second it. I'm gonna second it. Mr.
seconded by Councilmember Waring.
Mr. Chairman,
Of course.
Ms. Copeland, what was the maintenance amount you said?
It would be 50,000 annually.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Listen, I want to commend everybody for working on this one. I think this is a really good step going forward. Thank you, Ms. Coltrane, for whatever new excitement you're bringing to the project. So this sounds like a good deal moving forward. Hopefully we can have power people on your board to help you raise some money and get the balance of the money to get it renovated.
Yep, we actually got a verbal commitment, our first one Friday afternoon. So
Good.
we have got good campaign consultant, and we're moving forward with that. So it's a huge help to have the city's support, and I just can't thank you all enough. Truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Judy, you did a wonderful job summarizing the history of all of this. And we've had some very spirited discussions on where the museum was headed and where they wanted to go. And I just wanted to make sure that we were good partners, Karen, for this. Is a very important function that y'all provide to the citizens of the community. I remember one of the questions that we get asked earlier during those discussions was the who your clients were, so to speak. And we got some really good numbers back from y'all doing that. And I just presume that is still the standard that y'all are reaching out to the members of our community to take full advantage of the wonderful things that y'all offer over there. I just remember taking a tour with Councilmember Shealy several years ago. It was pouring down rain. And I was just amazed at the level of activity inside that building and the buzz. And you could feel the energy immediately as you walked in. So I'm looking forward to an after the fact tour when you got your improvements underway. So please keep that in mind for us when you do that.
I absolutely will. And I would just say when we had Memorial Day weekend, Spoleto, and rain, cold rain on a Saturday, we broke the record. We had 1,500 people through that building.
Wow.
Throughout the day, so nobody called the fire marshal. But I
They're not here on this call.
I came in to monitor the situation on Saturday because it got a little dicey. But we had a line out to Ann Street with people from all over. You know, it was good to see, and everybody was very positive and excited about the museum. So I have, I guess before I landed here, I have 14 years of children's museum experience in Richmond, Virginia, and Columbia, South Carolina at Adventure. And I know what we need to do. My family and I moved to Ragboro. My husband and I bought a home here when I was running Adventure because we love Charleston so much. And I would look across the street and look at that museum and say, we gotta get that to the level that this fabulous city is, and I'm committed to that. So I thank all of you very, very much. I just wanted to note that Stephen Bowden is already on our board, and we're looking for our second person from the board. And if there's any takers, please give me a call.
I nominate Chairman Ross Appel.
I second that. I second that. He's got a 1-year-old back.
I do have a 1-year-old. You can count me in as a financial supporter and a attendee for sure. I just have to get my wife's approval for any more boards and commitments and things of that nature.
Understood.
You got Councilmember Parker with young children, and Councilmember Bowden with young children. I think that's the extent of our youth movement in on city council.
Absolutely.
You're right. Councilman Parker would be really good.
Yeah.
Let me ask this, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
I know some of these kids, obviously, all of them aren't from the city. Has anybody, or do y'all have plans to approach the county on this capital improvement project to see whether there's any help on that from Charleston County?
We do, and the state. We've actually formed the South Carolina Children's Museum Association with the Upstate Children's Museum, Adventure, Low Country, and Rock Hill. And we are going, the 4 of us together, after state funding as well for all of our capital needs. So there's, we think that we can raise the bulk of this fairly quickly. I need to knock on something, but we feel very good about it. And just the conversations we're having just in town. I mean, everybody seems to love the Children's Museum and understand why it's important. And particularly the outreach that we do in Charleston for families that can't afford to come to the museum, as well as throughout the Low Country. So we're, those aspects of what we do helps attract private philanthropic support as well.
Yeah, thank you. But by the way, welcome to Charleston.
Thank you.
Yeah, this all sounds great. I think we've made some very good progress on this, and Ms. Coltrane, welcome, and really excited about seeing what's in store for this institution. We went a few months ago with our little girl and had a great time, and it was it's just great. I think it's great currently, but just the idea of it continuing to expand and improve to serve our entire community is just really exciting to think about. So thank you for your efforts, and as well as the board members that we've been engaged with over the past year or so. Any further comments, questions from the committee? All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and let's vote this thing through. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Okay.
Colby.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is an authorization for the mayor to execute an after the fact approval for a letter of agreement. This is in regards to some locker rooms over at Burke High School. Please take it away.
Thank you, Chairman. Yep, that's what it is. Burke is redoing their weight rooms this summer, and they would like to use the locker rooms at Stony Field, move their weight equipment over. So we are not using them at this time. So we, agreed to be good partners and do that. They still have to abide by all the terms of the current, use agreement that they have for Stony Field. It's for a set period of time well, it actually says June 21st, but for until August 22nd. We did go ahead and have the mayor authorize this so that they could go ahead and start using it during, since this was in the meeting is in the middle of June. An adult employee has to be in the locker room with them at all times when they're using it. We've got some protections in there. They can't drop the weights on the floor.
Good deal. Thank you so much for that presentation, Councilman Waring.
I was just saying, you say you can't drop the weights on the floor.
Yeah.
Could you kind of expand on that a little bit? I mean, most of the time that's what happens.
I think that's what happened. That's why I put it in there that
I've been in locker rooms.
Well, I mean, it's a very good point. I mean, if you're doing cleans and, Olympic lifts and stuff like that, what they do these days is you can get these paddings, these mats that you can drop the weights on. But we want to make sure, of course, if we're going to do this, that the guys and the girls can do what you got to do to, perform correctly. So I trust that all that's been worked through.
Okay. No, one thing, if it's too heavy, I know, but it's going immediately.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're not powerful enough on this committee to change the law of gravity. That's
No.
weights are.
I don't know. Some members of council seem to think that way from time to time, but
it is true, but that is about as close to a law of nature as you're gonna get there. Well, good deal. Well, any further questions? I'm not sure we've got a motion on the floor.
So move.
second.
Okay, moved and properly seconded. Any further comments, questions from committee members? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. Thank you so much. All right, next item up. This is in connection with affordable housing project over on Cunnington Avenue. This is 98 units. And this is an agreement with Conifer Developers Incorporated. And I see Ms. Shaw Johnson is on the line. Please take it away.
Thank you, Chairman Appel. I'm going to give the committee just an introductory and overview and ask Melina to cover the legal aspects of the option to lease and ground lease agreements that are before you. Conifer came to us through a request for proposals that was administered by our procurement department. This was one of three proposals that we received. The committee selected them as the most responsive bidder. This property, as you all may be familiar with, is on Cunnington Avenue in the Upper Peninsula or Neck area of the city of Charleston. And we're excited to have them proposing about 98 units of multifamily rental housing at this site. They would provide living quarters or apartments, rental apartments for those earning from 30% of the area median income to 80% of the area median income. You may also recall that this site is where our Hope Center will be constructed as well. They will be next door neighbors, if you will, to each other. And so this development team is coming to the city of Charleston new. We have not used them previously, although they have a great history in the Northeast of work that they've done around the same type of construction. They are asking the city of Charleston, as they provide these 98 units, for $2 million to go towards the $34 million price tag to build these 98 units. Currently, we are holding about $1.8 million in ARPA funds directly awarded to the Department of Housing and Community Development, specifically for the purpose of assisting with the development of housing. And so that is a little background on this. We would enter into this, if approved, for 60 years. And then the city of Charleston would receive our land as well as the improvements back. Until that time, the Conifer developers would oversee and manage those units that are constructed there. With that, Melina, did you want to jump into the specifics on those agreements? Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. So the option to lease would allow Conifer 365 days to exercise that option to enter into the ground lease, which is attached as an exhibit. Like Gianna mentioned, it would be, if they do exercise that option to enter into the ground lease, the term would be for 60 years. And once, if they do exercise that option and they enter into it, they would be developing 98 total units. They are waiting on the results of what's going to happen with the low-income housing tax credit, which is the reason for the long option period of 365 days to make sure that those funds would be available to them. During that period, they would have to complete construction once started within 30 months from the commencement date, and there is a penalty of $4,000 per month of rent, penalty rent if it's not completed within that time period. All plans and specifications for the improvements, including all the common areas, are subject to approval by the city, obviously. I'm happy to answer any other specific questions you guys might have about either the option to lease or the ground lease.
I've got a question.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw Johnson and Ms. Dinwoody. Councilman Waring.
So 365 days to enter into a lease?
Yes, Councilman, it's 365 days to exercise that option for the ground lease. The reason for that, again, is I understand that the low-income housing tax credit still needs to be approved and finalized.
Yeah, I understand. I've heard that from other builders. Apparently, Columbia is still yet to get their act together. But anyway, why don't we just wait until Columbia gets its act together? So I have one question on that. Why tie it up a year and they're just waiting to find out what's happening in Columbia? As I would suspect most tax credit builders, developers will be waiting on bated breath. And the second thing, why 60 years and not 30 years? So, I mean, the debt that they will get, I doubt that it'll be a 60-year mortgage. I mean, so why? No, go ahead. No, I'm finished.
So let me answer the first one. While they're waiting, they are going to exercise due diligence because state housing has decided not to do a round this year, but they're going to put one out early next year. And so, like many other developers, if you're not receiving the low-income housing tax credits, it's difficult to get the full amount of funding that is required to put these deals together. So this group will move forward with getting specific strategies in place, doing the due diligence that is required of state housing, and then be ready to submit the first of 2024. We received notification late Friday, I think it was, that they are not going to do around. They have to fulfill some other obligations that they have. And my opinion is they could still do it, but that's just my opinion.
Right.
So that would allow this group to move forward, get their due diligence done, such that they would be ready to move forward when state housing releases the application. What you'll see when we deal with the next item is we oftentimes have that performance or due diligence period too short of a period of time. And so we found that a number of these folks have to come back and ask for amendments to extend their option to lease. And so this kind of keeps us from having to do that 2 and 3 different times. So
That all makes sense. So
Yes,
what
sir.
about the 60 years versus?
And so
why?
this is probably the 3rd time we've done a 60-year lease. This group, in fact, asked for a 99-year lease period. It allows them to basically get the property built, construction and management in place. If they, the lease agreement also requires them to maintain and upkeep the building, and it just allows for stabilization within a set period of time. I don't think in any of these option to lease and ground lease agreements, we have done it for less than 50 years.
I mean, I still don't see the advantage to us to do that. But anyway, you've answered it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor.
So, a couple of things. Do we know if during their due diligence, will they be actually proceeding with any design, soil testing, all those kinds of things? And I'm just presuming that if, in the event that they don't proceed with the lease, that we would have the right for any of that information or plans that they put together.
Correct, Mayor. They would do all of that. And as part of the language in these agreements, they would then have to give that information to the city of Charleston at no cost, of course. And if they had to do a phase 2 at all on the property, they would have to seek permission from the city of Charleston before that is done. We have done, of course, much of that information, but we did it when we were about to acquire. So some of that may be a bit out of date, but as they do that, yes, sir, they have to provide us copies of those documents.
And if I may, a follow-up, and I note you've got the income range from 30% to 80%. So we've got some low income capacity there, so to speak. But do we have, we've talked, Gianna, a couple of times about having some real connectivity between the clients that we serve at the Hope Center with the housing that would be on this site. Will we be able to reserve a certain number of the units for any future synergy or programmatic things between what we're doing right next door and this available housing?
Yes, sir. In fact, as part of their proposal, they included Castell Singleton's organization's Palmetto Community Action Program. And so they talked about the connection between assisting those persons who would fall into that 30% and below category with housing education, housing counseling, and being able to transition them into housing. And typically your folks coming out of homelessness will fall into that category, and or they are supported by subsidy or vouchers from your housing authorities. And so, yes, Mayor, absolutely. We don't call it transitional housing because it's longer than 6 months, but yes, the idea is that we have available units for those individuals as well.
Great, thank you.
Did anybody talk about, well, Mr. Chairman?
Of course, go ahead.
Somewhere in this 60 years, is it possible for the city to have an option to buy the complex?
I don't believe that is included in this proposed agreement that we're bringing to you today. Gianna, am I mistaken about that? I reviewed it earlier and I didn't see anything like that.
I don't recall that one, Councilmember Waring. I know that was in one of our other agreements. I do not think it is in this agreement, but I'll go back through and confirm that. Yeah.
I mean, well, if it's not in there, Could we possibly have that discussion? You know, I'm a big favor, just like you are, fan of having a permanent affordable housing. And in particular, since we own the property, it just makes sense that that's one of the biggest keys to creating permanent affordable housing is ownership. So, you know, I know we did that on one of the tracks on where the bridge came down. The Cooper River Bridge came down. I think it was after 60 years or 50 years, maybe. City had the right of first refusal or something like that. So it seems like that would make sense, if possible, to get that negotiated in this.
So Councilmember Waring, we will receive the property and the improvements back at the end of the 60 years.
Somehow I missed that part. I didn't know about that.
Yeah,
It's
no,
already ours.
yeah, it'll be the cities.
Well, forget what I said. I didn't know about that part. So thank you. I'm glad I asked the question to find that out.
I thought I said that. Apologies.
Maybe I missed it. I could have.
That's okay.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good deal. All right. Well, any further questions, comments from committee members? All right, let's vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. Thank you, Ms. Shaw Johnson and Ms. Dinwiddie. All right, next up is another affordable housing project. This is a third amendment to an option to lease and ground lease agreement, and this is for the Lowline Affordable Housing Site. Ms. Shaw Johnson, while we got you on the line.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
A little bit more straightforward.
Yes, they're just asking for an extension of their option to lease. They've been actively pursuing additional funding and awaiting further notification of the funding that that was committed to them by state housing. And so we understand that those letters are now coming forth from state housing to help fill the gaps that existed for these deals. And so they're essentially asking the city to allow them that time to pull all of that information together and move forward. I would say they have gone through their entitlements as well through the city. They have gone through BAR, sought and received that approval. So this is like the final piece, if you will, before they can begin construction.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. You guys have it.
Mr. Chairman, can we take item G last and move items H and I up? Because we got to go into executive session on G.
That sounds reasonable to me.
That motion, I'll second it.
I so move.
I'll second it.
All right, moved and properly seconded. So we'll go ahead and take H next, and then we'll do our annexations, and we'll close with our executive session item if that suits. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. Okay, we've got Mr. Eric Pullman, our West Ashley man of many hats, here to give a presentation on options number 1, number 2, and number 3 of the Sumar Street development. But I see the mayor's got his hand up before we get into that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was just going to suggest to you and our committee members, of course, this is on the agenda as a consideration of these options. They were presented in a public meeting the other day, and we felt like it was appropriate in bringing this matter back to council to bring it back through the real estate committee as it's been here before. But I was just going to suggest to council members, my colleagues, I know we all have individual opinions about this matter, and I would just suggest we take this as information and refer it on to council, for the full council consideration next week.
Chairman, I agree with that.
Yeah, I have no objection to that either. We're just going to take this as information only.
Right.
And Eric, while we're considering that, would you mind forwarding to all council members the PowerPoint presentation that was shown on June 8th?
Of course, yeah. In fact, that's most of what I'm about to show you guys. So,
yeah.
Great. Well,
I've seen it. So,
I have not seen it. I was out of town last week, so I'm very eager to see it. And
and considering where you were, Councilmember Appel, I'm surprised you made it back. So
it was close. It was
yeah,
close.
I know.
It was a little touch and go for a while.
I was waiting for you to invite us to have our meeting down there with you, but that invitation never came forward.
We ought to talk about doing that. That'd be a lot of fun. Well, Eric, Mayor, and everybody else on the committee, I think that's a great way to proceed today. Let's just get this information, and that way we can, sort of have a little bit of a dry run here for next week at council. I'm sure we'll have nothing short of a full-blown discussion over these options. So, Eric, consider this the dry run.
All right, sounds good. So so thank you, council members, for having us back again. We do have Jason Ward and Jonathan Oakman on the line too, if there are any poignant questions that I cannot answer. So just they are here for backup, but it'll be mostly me going through the slides. So as mentioned, we did have a public information outreach meeting on June 8th last week at the Pearl Theater in West Ashley. There we go. It was a very well attended meeting, definitely over on the right side. That auditorium seats 135 people and it was standing room only. So we had a very good amount of people. It was broken up into two sections. The first hour of it, we had one of the rooms open with some of the elements that we were then presented on. It was open for a gallery style for people to walk through, kind of look at stuff and allow them some time to, kind of just soak it all in. It's a lot of information that I usually present to everyone. Happens when it's a 5-year project is you have a lot of history to catch people up on when they come in. And then the actual presentation itself went very well. Here's the agenda that we went through. So had an introduction from Mayor Tecklenburg. We did just kind of how we got to the program for the site. So that way people understood the different uses and activities, where that all came from, showed the alternatives for the redevelopment layout, and then also touched on the West Ashley redevelopment TIF and how we're planning to use that for the actual city portion of this when it comes to the development. And then you'll see on the right side, we tried something a little bit new. We used a platform called Slido to do a live interactive survey while we were going through this. So there were several questions throughout that allowed the audience to really come back in and help us move this along. For the program, of course, I always like to reiterate this every time I talk about this project, is that, we had some of the most robust, in-depth community feedback at the very onset of this. Back in 2018, almost 1,000 people, 927 people responded and, helped us really craft what we wanted to put here for the program. This was the broad mix that they got to consider for what could go here. These were all allowed uses through general business zoning category. So we just wanted to open it up and really let people let people have a say in what they felt could go here. This was our top 4, 5, if you want to consider it 5 at the bottom for the program. So people really wanted to see passive green space, small scale retail, restaurants, cultural and active green space. That one kind of came in tied at 44. And then I won't rehash the full history that you guys are aware of, but that is how we got the program that then Landmark came along and has been providing us the way to achieve it since then. We did, the first of our questions was just asking the attendees, do you still agree with that? Is this everything that you do want to see here? Is this still accurate? And overwhelmingly, 90% of them said, yes, this is exactly what they want to see come into this site, those types of uses and activities. So from there, we went into the design alternatives to really show, okay, well, how do you achieve those? Here's some experientials that we vetted with community input back during COVID. We had some meeting with some community leaders to figure out different styles and how to really break up how people would experience the site. These were the ones that came to the top of that. From that, here's option one. Option one is the exact same option that you guys have seen before. This is the one that has gone through the West Asheville Revitalization Commission, Design Review Board, Technical Review Committee, Design Review Committee. So this had the most amount of detail and thought put into it in terms of fleshing everything out, how everything would work. So what we actually ended up having to do is redraw it to bring it down a scale, so that way it would match more in line with the other two options that were produced at the request of City Council. So on this one, you can see the commercial elements are all pushed up along Sam Rittenberg Boulevard. It has an internal linear alley that all the entrances for the restaurants, retail, offices would be along. That lines up with the future Civic building, which would be buildings A and B. A being the city office tower at 3 stories, B being the assembly space. On this one, you can see up in the top left, it's a little hard to read. I have a slide further down that makes it larger, but we also had all the different square footages and occupancies that could be allowed in these areas. So for this one, we considered this maximum use on the site. We're using the vast majority for active uses as opposed to the passive of parking a car on location. When you're looking at this one, some of the stuff to pull out is the fact that we have a 500-person flex auditorium space. Our civic lawn is at just shy of 6,000 square feet, which is a very robust size. If you were to stand people shoulder to shoulder on that, you get about 1,100 people there to fill it corner to corner. And then we also would work into this some of the more plaza and splash pad elements that were requested by some council members to add some interest and another aspect for the kids to really help land some good memories at this location. And then on the right side, you see how the parking layout would occur underneath the site. This one did have this. So this one really is fully showing the constraints that we had on the site based on community feedback. And so the buildings are at 2 and 3 stories tall. The community felt like that was what was important. It needed to be suburban in scale in terms of the height of the building. So they wanted 2 and 3 stories. They wanted the commercial up on Sam Rittenberg, like I mentioned. And then in addition to that, one of the items was that they did not want to see a parking deck. So this really hit on all of those. And then there's also, in addition to that, the city of Charleston, we put on them that we wanted to see Dutch dialogues innovations brought into this. And then we have a green building standard for our city buildings called Charleston Rises that we wanted them to achieve that for the project overall. So you can see here, this would be the drive past as if you were turning down to go down Old Town Road. You see the city office building on the right side. The auditorium would be behind those palm trees, and it would just have this very large civic fountain right there, welcoming you to West Ashley and letting you know that this is a place of prominence. Here's the Sam Rittenberg side looking. So this would be if you were standing in front of where the sporting goods store is at, looking across the street. So what you're seeing there is the 3 stories on the right side are the privately held offices. On the left side, you see the city offices. In between would be the restaurant retail that has their front entrances along that public alleyway. There is a breezeway that connects Sumar Street down the spine. In addition to that, you'll see that kind of wood banded tower element closer into us. That would be an above ground cistern. Part of Charleston Rises says that they also want to explain how you handle stormwater visually, not just hiding everything underground. So, and then here would be an activity or an event going on in the public plaza space where you can see the restaurants and retail overlook this to provide a sense of eyes and enlivenment where maybe your kids can be playing down on the lawn while you're up on one of the patios looking out over them. And then the entry down into the parking area itself. So here's where we get into the newer items. Here is option 2. Option 2 would be an above ground structured parking deck. So for this one, what happened when you brought the parking up above ground, we had to reorganize the site in order to accommodate the new massing of the parking structure and really just realigning how the interior flow occurred. So you can see that we're still trying to use Sam Rittenberg as mostly the commercial area with buildings J and F. But now what we've done is also break up that courtyard. It's a much larger courtyard that could have some flexibility to it. So building A would be up at the front corner there. Just to finish this off, building A would be the civic conference spaces. So in the last option, everything was in one building. Now we're breaking it up into 2 buildings where we have some smaller conference rooms in the A building, and then B building would be the actual full-sized flex auditorium. And then C would be support for the courtyard area. So restrooms, storage, things of that nature. And then we're moving some of the buildings around. So H and I are now flush against the parking deck to really screen the deck from inside the courtyard to give it a much more human feeling to it once you're in there. The area labeled E would be a flexible plaza space where during normal operations, it would be closed off from Old Town Road and you would just be, it would be open 612. Paved area. In the event of an event, you could open up that location over on Old Town Road as a secondary egress to allow the parking deck to empty out in a more cohesive manner. Buildings H and I would be a retail and a coffee shop building. E has that splash pad in it, and then D is the civic lawn. Keeping to the same idea that was presented from the to the community would be keeping this with 2- and 3-story buildings. The civic buildings are now 1.5 stories tall, slightly taller than a regular 1-story, but we have in this option removed the taller city office building. And the parking deck itself would be a 3-level, so there would be ground level, mid-level, and then roof. And that's the way that we can get the parking on there with this. And just because it looks like this in the massing diagram, there are ways to screen and beautify a parking deck so that way it does not just appear to be floating slabs. It's something that in Charleston we're very good at screening our parking decks, and we would expect that same level of detail to come out of this project. Here would be the view of the new civic building. So you can see it's 1.5 stories tall. So it's basically an extra height 1-story building. Breezeway that connects them, but it would now be open instead of enclosed. The right side would have the smaller conference rooms that can be adapted to different neighborhood meetings. And the left side would have that auditorium within it. Here's the new civic lawn space. So you can see it's really fully wrapped this time with structures and buildings. So it would give a completely enclosed feel, whereas in option 1, there would be that opening out to that surface level parking. So we could have the flexibility to have events that spilled out onto there in terms of food trucks or farmers markets, things of that nature. Very similar in terms of detailing and program here. And then option 3 here is the fully surface level parking one. So on this one, there would be no above ground, no below ground. This is just your standard pulling off the street, get out of your car and you're there. So for this one, what ends up happening is the majority of the site is then taken over by this surface level parking lot, and it really skinnies down what we can do at this location. In order to balance the parking field and the activity space, we've now gone to single story across the board for this area. The Civic Plaza space is narrowed down. I believe when it comes to private offices, those are, if I remember right, we've cut the private offices. So now you're looking at just a few restaurant spaces and a coffee shop, and then the assembly building, and that smaller conference room style building. So with this one, like I said, it's all one story. We're still trying to keep with the same program and the same feeling of keeping that lawn space enclosed, so that way families do feel comfortable bringing their children here, knowing that they're protected by the buildings around them from the vehicles on each side. The civic space would more or less stay the same in terms of the detailing to the previous one. Interior courtyard is much smaller, not as much going on. And then here's the square feet comparison between all of these ones. Give me 1 second. There we go. So on this one, you can see that just kind of what changes between all the different options in terms of square feet. So the biggest difference from option 1 to option 2 is the removal of the city office tower. So that is what's reflected in here. And then from option 1 to option 3, you can see just everything is cut down in size for the square feet. And then when it comes to parking comparisons, option 1 with the underground has about 244 vehicles that it can park on site. Option 2, 253 vehicles, so that's 9 more than option 1. And then option 3, you're looking at 152 cars that can park on the surface. So that's down 92 vehicles. So from that, we went back into the rest of our presentation here, asked the general public that was there, based on all the information you just heard, what are your rankings? What are your opinions about what should occur at this site? And 72% said that they still favored the underground parking. 18% favored the parking deck, the structured above ground, and 10% said the surface. Like I said, we just briefly went over the TIF and different funding models for it. Asked them for public comments. There was 11 people that got up to speak. And then here's all the different digital questions and answers that were submitted to us. And then this presentation with a few extra slides in it is available online already. So with that, I will go ahead and stop screen sharing and give my voice a rest for a minute.
Good deal. Thank you, Eric, for that presentation. Any comments, questions from the committee? Again, we're not voting on anything today, but I think in the interest of maybe fleshing some of this stuff out, I know we've got the Landmark folks on the line. We might entertain some discussion today to the extent y'all are up for it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, for today, I just want to thank everybody involved with coming back with more than one option. So I appreciate the efforts that it took to go and think of 2 additional options. So when you said, that's the first time I saw it. So Eric, if you'd be kind enough to send it, push it out through email, I'd be appreciative.
Definitely will do.
Thank you.
Good deal. Mr. Mayor.
So, Mr. Chairman, we did discuss briefly at the presentation also what the financial difference might be amongst at least option 1 and 2. I don't think the other night they mentioned a difference on the third one, but I think just for the record, if we could ask Jason to share with us what he knows now about the approximate ballpark differential in pricing. I think just so everybody can consider all the facts, that would be a good thing to share.
Hello, everybody. Sure. Let me pull up some notes here while I'm trying to get there. So roughly, our first option was, we were originally discussing 45. I'm talking in round numbers. So option number one was roughly 46 million. We expect, and again, please understand that we're trying to cobble together numbers from our pricing efforts on option one, and we have little to no design work really done beyond conceptual for option 2 and 3. So I just want to add that disclaimer, but we feel like that option 2 or 3, a reasonable number for option 2, which is the structured parking deck, will be roughly around 35 to 37 million for everything. And that does incorporate a condensed civic center. Option 3 is roughly 21 to 23 million, and that's for the condensed version with the surface parking option.
And I guess I would follow up, Jason, and also ask you to share what the timing implications would be of 1, 2, and 3 in terms of being able to, put shovel in the ground.
Sure, be happy to. So we've, as you all know, we've been down a far road with this. We are through design development. So right now we have basically our DRB, TRC approvals. Our option number one, I'd remind you that we've spent close to $650,000 on that design, and that we are roughly a 3 to 4 months away from being able to complete that plan and to expedite a building permit with the city. If we go with option 2 or 3, there are things that we know about the site that would create efficiencies for us, meaning in our design program, geotechnical survey, there's certain things there, stormwater plans, et cetera, but we're basically going back to the starting line. So the last 9 to 12 months we've spent working on this design effort. It's not a complete throwaway, but that might be a good way to describe it. So we are going back to the starting line. So if in just generality, I would say it would roughly add another 9 to 10 months to, if we were to start on option 2 or 3 today, to our process. The construction, interesting enough, option 1 is a difficult construction process. And building underground is something that will take a little more time than just building a parking lot. So there may be some efficiencies there for catching up for a project delivery, but I can't really, we haven't really dug into that too deep at this point, but I would add that note.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, Councilman Shade.
Jason, the price you gave for option 3 was $20 million, give or take. Was that for all buildings or just for the civic design building?
You're on mute.
I'm sorry about that. No, sir, that's roughly just for the public component. So that would include the associated cost with things that we've associated with the public component of the buildings, and that would be the public side cost. That would not include my cost on the private side.
Thank you.
Sure.
And to follow up, just to be consistent, that's true of all the options. The numbers that you're sharing about pricing is
yes,
just
sir.
Public part of the development, and then all those other buildings with the restaurants and offices are all buildings that your company will construct and pay for.
Correct. We will. Yes. I mean, for option number 1, our total cost is roughly $75 million. So the $30 million would be my portion, and the 45 would be that of the city's based on our agreement.
Thank you.
All right. Jason, thank you for that additional information. I think that's all very relevant as we digest and consider these options and where we go from here. Any further discussion from the committee?
Thank you, Jason and Jonathan.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
I think it'd be good, not today, but maybe certainly before Tuesday week, to break out how much is for the parking and how much is for the building as opposed to a lump sum total. So we can actually compare and contrast between plans. Anyway, I think that'd be good to have that information. Thanks.
Yes, sir, we can do that.
All right. I see Councilmember Gregg's got his hands up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, one other clarification. In addition to what Councilman Waring asked for, would it be possible to get a breakdown on the cost per square foot of construction and or I know there was a lease option as well, what the city's cost per square foot would be for construction as well as if we were to purchase it and then what the city's cost per square foot would be in a leasing scenario.
Sure, Councilmember Gregg. We've looked at that and we're happy to provide that. Either option for us would be fine.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
So just a suggestion, because I'd like for Eric to share this presentation with all of the other council members as well who haven't seen it. If you could send that on out, but maybe follow up, by the end of the week with the information from Jason about the timing and the financial numbers for each option, maybe as a separate thing, so we can go ahead and at least get the show that the slides that you just presented to them. Is that workable?
And I would maybe also suggest, and y'all shout me down if y'all don't think this is a good idea, but just in the interest of heading into next week, we also sort of have a summary in there that's going out to all council members about how this exactly works from a public-private perspective. I mean, I think what Jason just alluded to about the city's portion, what the city is responsible for, what Landmark's responsible for, I think it's very important for us to be very clear in regards to how this public-private partnership is supposed to work, so that when we have that very robust discussion on June 20th, we're operating off the same sheet of music as much as possible, because this is there's a lot going on here, and there's a long history to this, as Eric's pointed out. And I just think not everybody's been in that process. I mean, this started before I was on council. So I just think having as much, summarized ahead of time will allow us to be as productive and as efficient as possible on the 20th. But other than that, I think that's all I've got for today. Anybody else have any further thoughts before we move on?
Annexations.
All right.
I just like the chairman to take note. I don't know how many of these people coming into District 7. Could you please tell me?
I didn't. Let's see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Half of them.
We got 5 out of. I counted 12 total annexations. This is definitely the record on a single agenda that
I'm telling
I've
you,
seen.
man. Now you know what the thrill of victory feels like, man.
It's pretty
I usually
good.
see 11 and 9, 11 and 9.
It's somewhat discerning that you had a count and you can't just read Roman numerals, Councilman. I know that.
Well, actually,
some of us is old enough. We've been around here since Roman numeral time.
I guess I can't read Latin.
You went to a Catholic school, for God's sakes. Come on,
It's
man.
true. It's true. You don't want to see my report cards.
Move for approval. Item
that
I,
motion?
1 through 12.
1 through 12. We've got a motion on the floor to approve all 12 annexations. Can I get a second?
I did second, yeah.
Okay, seconded by Councilmember Waring, and it appears to me that these are all residential annexations. Is that correct, Ms. Connor?
They all are residents except for item number 3 and item number 7. Item number 3, 1349 Ashley Hall Road. This is a commercial property that's going to be a landscape architect's office. No major renovations or use changes. And then item number 7, 3338 Maybank Highway is another commercial property that looks to continue commercial use. And staff does not foresee any controversy with either of these items or D10 single family homes. Not
Great.
even in Councilmember Waring's district.
Right.
Good deal. All right, we've got a motion on the floor, and any comments, questions from the committee?
I just want to encourage Molly to keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Good deal. Good
Way to
deal.
go, Molly.
All right. Well, okay, let's vote it. All in favor of 1 through 12, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. Thank you again, Molly, and everybody else with our staff involved in these annexations. The last item on our agenda is an executive session to receive legal advice, and this is in connection with 2125 Ashley River Road. Can I entertain a motion to go into executive session to
Second.
legal advice on this matter? Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?